Welcome to WHMIS 2015, short form or acronym for Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System. WHMIS is a Canada-wide system created by government, business, and labor to protect the health and safety of everyone who works with or near hazardous workplace materials. Canada has aligned WHMIS with the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, GHS. GHS was developed by the United Nations to establish globally a common set of rules for classifying hazardous products, labels, and a standard format for safety data sheets or SDSs, formerly known as Material Safety Data Sheets or MSDSs. GHS does not replace WHMIS. A hazardous product is the name given to a product, material, or substance that is capable of posing significant risk to health, safety, and property. These products are regulated by WHMIS 2015 and fall into hazard classes and categories, each uniquely identified by a pictogram, that is, symbol, for quick recognition.
1. Hazardous material container labels supply basic information about the product, along with pictograms that highlight the potential dangers. All containers of hazardous materials must be properly labeled. 2. Safety data sheets, or SDSs for short, contain comprehensive information about hazardous materials, including their content and/or ingredients, directions for proper use, correct cleanup and first aid procedures. An SDS must be available to workers for every hazardous product that is used. 3. Education to ensure anyone working with hazardous materials knows the potential dangers and the correct handling methods for these products. Under WHMIS regulation, you have a right to know about the hazardous materials in your workplace. Your employer is responsible to train you and those who work in proximity to hazardous materials.
The two most important parts of WHMIS are labels and safety data sheets. There are two main types of labels: supplier labels and workplace labels. SDSs or supplier labels will show a signal word that indicates the severity of the hazard, if assigned. Danger and warning. Danger is used for the more severe hazards, and warning is used for less severe hazards. Only one word will appear on the SDS or supplier label. If the product is both a danger and warning, you will see the word danger printed. The supplier label is affixed to the product container by the supplier. The label must be shown in English and French and contain the following information: product identifier, hazard pictogram or pictograms, signal word, hazard statements, precautionary statements, supplier identification. First aid is included in precautionary statements. The hazard pictogram that appears on the supplier label is very important. It provides you with information about the primary hazard posed by a product. It also indicates whether the product is dangerous to touch or breathe, is easily combustible, unstable, or reacts negatively when mixed with other materials. Look for a pictogram that is framed by a red square set on a point. The exception is the biohazard pictogram, which is in a round black border.
Along with supplier labels, you may come across workplace labels. This is a simplified version of a supplier label and may be used when hazardous materials are made in the workplace or when hazardous materials are poured from the original container into another container. The employer is responsible for affixing workplace labels to these containers. The label requires 3 pieces of information. 1. Product's name. 2. Safe handling procedures. 3. A reference to the SDS if available. This label does not require hazard pictograms or signal word.
A safety data sheet is a much more detailed listing of key information about a hazardous product. It contains more data than can fit on a label. The SDS is required to be updated within 90 days when the supplier becomes aware of any significant new data. Before you start using a product, know the hazards, how to safely handle and store the product, and know what to do in an emergency. Your supervisor must inform you of the location of SDSs in your department. SDSs should be in an area that is readily accessible at all times, on all shifts, for all workers. There are 16 sections in a safety data sheet. Section 1, Identification, provides product name, supplier information, and recommended use and restrictions on use. Section 2, Hazard Identification, lists the hazard classification, class and category of the substance or mixture or a description of the identified hazard. Section 3, Composition or information on ingredients, lists the chemical name, common name, and synonyms, and concentration. Section 4, First Aid Measures, explains the first aid measures by route of exposure, inhalation, skin contact, eye contact, and ingestion. Section 5, Firefighting Measures, lists the specific hazards arising from the hazardous product and how to safely extinguish. Section 6, Accidental Release Measures, describes personal precautions, protective equipment, and emergency procedures. Section 7, Handling and Storage, lists the precautions for safe handling and storage. Section 8, Exposure Controls and/or Personal Protection, deals with appropriate engineering controls and individual protection measures. Section 9, Physical and Chemical Properties, describes the product's physical characteristics, such as whether it is a gas, a liquid, or a solid, its color and appearance, its boiling and freezing points. Section 10, Stability and Reactivity, describes the product's reactivity and possibility of hazardous reactions. Section 11, Toxicological Information, provides complete description of the various toxic health effects and the data used to identify those effects. Section 12, Ecological Information, lists other adverse effects. Section 13, Disposable Considerations, deals with information on the safe handling for disposal and methods of disposal. Section 14, Transport Information, provides the shipping, labeling, and special precautions. Section 15, Regulatory Information, lists the safety, health, and environmental regulations specific to the product. Section 16, Other Information, provides the date of the latest revision of the SDS. An SDS can look intimidating, and it does contain a lot of complex scientific information. The important sections to read are sections 2, 4, 8, and 11. These will provide you with important information on the ways this material could affect your health, what you must do to use this product safely, for example, what protective clothing to wear, and what first aid is necessary should something go wrong. Remember that referring to the SDS is the safest way to learn how to use, handle, and store hazardous materials.
Hazardous products can be harmful to your health if you do not limit your exposure to them. As you handle these materials, you'll need to know whether they are health hazards or physical hazards. A health hazard is the ability of a chemical to affect your health quickly, burn, or over a long period of time, cancer or lead poisoning. A physical hazard is a sudden reaction such as a fire, explosion, or corrosion. Physical hazards are controlled by handling chemicals properly. For example, WHMIS defines physical hazards as flammable gases, flammable aerosols, gases under pressure, etc. The most effective way to control exposures to hazardous materials is at the source, by eliminating, substituting, or isolating the hazard. The second best control is along the path. This includes the use of controls such as general ventilation, barriers, or shields. The least satisfactory method for controlling a hazard is at the worker. This includes personal protective equipment, job rotation, and good personal hygiene.
When a material is listed as a hazardous product, the manufacturer must treat the product according to WHMIS regulations. Part of this regulation is to classify it according to a hazard class. WHMIS 2015 has many hazard classes. The class describes the different types of hazards. For example, flammable solids is a hazard class. Each hazard class is further split into categories or subcategories. For example, Category 1 is always more hazardous than Category 2 or 3. The assigned hazard class and category are a guide to the type of hazard, degree of hazard, and the precautions to follow. Some products present more than one hazard and can belong to more than one hazard class. Let's look at each of the physical hazard classes and associated categories to learn more. The flame pictogram is used to signify flammable classes. Flammable gases, Category 1. Flammable aerosols, Category 1 and 2. Flammable liquids, Category 1, 2, and 3. And flammable solids, Category 1 and 2. The four classes cover products that have the ability to ignite, catch fire, easily, and the main hazards are fire or explosion. Pyrophoric liquids, solids, and gases, Category 1. These products can catch fire very quickly, spontaneously, if exposed to air. Self-heating substances and mixtures, Category 1 and 2. The products may catch fire if exposed to air. They differ from pyrophoric liquids or solids in that they will ignite only after a longer period of time or when in large amounts. Substances and mixtures in contact with water emit flammable and/or explosive gases, Category 1, 2, and 3. As the class name suggests, these products react with water to release flammable gases. In some cases, the flammable gases may ignite very quickly, spontaneously. Self-reactive substances and mixtures, types B, C, D, E, and F. These products may react on their own to cause a fire or explosion, or may cause a fire or explosion if heated. Both the flame and the explosive pictograms are used for type B. Organic peroxides, types B, C, D, E, and F. These products may cause a fire or explosion if heated. Both the flame and the explosive pictograms are used for type B. Examples of flammables that may be found at work and at home include gasoline, propane, butane, and paint thinner. As a precaution, you should keep away from heat, hot surfaces, sparks, open flames, and other ignition sources. Keep the container tightly closed. Ground and bond the container and receiving equipment. Take action to prevent static discharges. Wear protective gloves, protective clothing, eye protection, and face protection.
The flame over circle pictogram is used to indicate oxidizer classes. Oxidizing gases, Category 1, oxidizing liquids, Category 1, 2, and 3, and oxidizing solids, Category 1, 2, and 3. The three classes cover oxidizers that may cause an explosion or fire or intensify a fire. Examples of oxidizers that may be found at work and home include hydrogen peroxide, chlorine, and sodium chlorate. As a precaution, you should keep away from heat, hot surfaces, sparks, open flames, and other ignition sources. Keep away from clothing and other combustible materials. Wear protective gloves, eye protection, and face protection. Wear fire-resistant or flame-retardant clothing.
The gas cylinder pictogram is used to identify the compressed gas class. Gases under pressure. This class includes compressed gases, liquefied gases, dissolved gases, and refrigerated liquefied gases. They are hazardous because of the high pressure inside the cylinder or container. Examples of gases under pressure that may be found at work and at home include propane, acetylene, and compressed air. As a precaution, you should handle cylinders with care. Do not drop them. Keep cylinders away from direct heat like furnaces or open flames. Store cylinders in areas designated by your supervisor.
The corrosion pictogram is used to signify the corrosive class. Corrosive to metals, Category 1. These products may be corrosive, chemically damage, or destroy to metals. Examples of corrosives that may be found at work and at home include battery acid, nitric acid, hydrochloric acid, and hydroxide solutions. As a precaution, you should keep containers tightly closed. Handle the material only when using appropriate protective clothing. Handle the material in well-ventilated areas and wear proper respiratory equipment.
The exploding bomb pictogram is used to identify explosive classes. Self-reactive substances and mixtures, types A and B. These products may react on their own to cause a fire or explosion, or may cause a fire or explosion if heated. Organic peroxides, types A and B. These products may cause a fire or explosion if heated. Examples of explosives that may be found at work include a wide variety of chemicals which can explode under certain conditions, shock, pressure, or high temperature. A smaller number are manufactured specifically for the purpose of being used as explosives. As a precaution, you should keep the material away from incompatible materials and store in the areas designated by your supervisor. Keep the material away from sources of ignition. Wear the proper protective equipment and clothing, including eye, face, and hand protection.
WHMIS also includes these hazards. Combustible dusts. This class is used to warn of products that are finely divided solid particles. If dispersed in air, the particles may catch fire or explode if ignited. Simple asphyxiants. These products are gases that may displace oxygen in air and cause rapid suffocation. Physical hazards not otherwise classified. This class is meant to cover any physical hazards that are not covered in any other physical hazard class. If a product is classified in this class, the hazard statement on the label and SDS will describe the nature of the hazard. Next, we will review the health hazards you may encounter in the workplace.
The health hazard pictogram is used to indicate the following classes and categories. Respiratory or skin sensitization, Category 1, 1A, and 1B. A respiratory sensitizer is a product that may cause allergy or asthma symptoms or breathing difficulties if inhaled. Germ cell mutagenicity, Category 1, 1A, 1B, and 2. This hazard class indicates products that may cause or are suspected of causing genetic defects. Carcinogenicity, Category 1, 1A, 1B, and 2. This hazard class includes products that may cause or are suspected of causing cancer. Reproductive toxicity, Category 1, 1A, 1B, and 2. This hazard class includes products that may damage or are suspected of damaging fertility or the unborn child, baby. Specific target organ toxicity, single exposure, Category 1 and 2. This hazard class covers products that cause or may cause damage to organs, for example, liver, kidneys, or blood, following a single exposure. Specific target organ toxicity, repeated exposure, Category 1 and 2. This hazard class covers products that cause or may cause damage to organs, for example, liver, kidneys, or blood, following prolonged or repeated exposure. Aspiration hazard, Category 1. This hazard class is for products that may be fatal if they are swallowed and enter the airways. Health hazards not otherwise classified. This class covers products that are not included in any other health hazard class. If a product is classified in this class, the hazard statement will describe the nature of the hazard.
The skull and crossbones pictogram is used to indicate the acute toxicity class. Acute toxicity, oral, Category 1, 2, and 3. Dermal, Category 1, 2, and 3. And inhalation, Category 1, 2, and 3. These poisonous products are fatal, toxic, or harmful if inhaled, following skin contact, or if swallowed. Acute toxicity refers to effects occurring following skin contact or ingestion exposure to a single dose or multiple doses given within 24 hours, or an inhalation exposure of 4 hours. The exclamation mark pictogram is used to identify the irritant classes. Acute toxicity, oral, dermal, and inhalation, Category 4. Skin corrosion and/or irritation, Category 2. This class covers products that cause severe skin burns, for example, corrosion, and products that cause skin irritation. Serious eye damage and/or irritation, Category 2 and 2A. Respiratory or skin sensitization, Category 1, 1A, and 1B. Specific target organ toxicity, repeated exposure, Category 3.
Look for the round black border to identify the biohazard pictogram. Biohazardous infectious materials, Category 1. These materials are microorganisms, nucleic acids, or proteins that cause or is a probable cause of infection, with or without toxicity, in humans or animals. As a precaution, you should avoid contamination by wearing protective equipment. Handle the material only when fully protected by the proper designated equipment. Handle the material in designated areas that are approved by your supervisor.
Under WHMIS, there are a number of rights and responsibilities. You have the right to know about any hazards that you or your coworkers could be exposed to in the workplace. Refuse work that is unsafe. Consult with your Joint Health and Safety Committee or Health and Safety representative. You have the responsibility to attend and participate in WHMIS training. Handle hazardous materials safely. Apply knowledge learned in training sessions. Review labels and SDSs prior to use. Report damaged, illegible, or missing labels or SDSs to your supervisor.
Your employer has the responsibility to implement the WHMIS program. Make available workplace labels and up-to-date SDSs for workers. Educate and train how to interpret and use this information. Prepare and maintain a chemical inventory of all hazardous materials in the workplace. The supplier has the responsibility to provide information, classify hazardous or WHMIS hazardous products, provide supplier labels and SDSs. The key is to think before you act. Stop and consider what materials you are working with. What hazardous materials are present in the workplace? Read the WHMIS labels on these products and their SDSs. Know the potential dangers. Understand how to use these materials to minimize risk. How to clean up these products. How to apply first aid. The goal of WHMIS is to create a safe and healthy workplace. WHMIS is successful only when suppliers, employers, and workers assume their responsibilities. The knowledge you have gained here will help you deal more safely with hazardous materials and keep your workplace safe from the dangers posed by these materials. This will better ensure your own safety and the safety of others. How to apply first aid. The goal of WHMIS is to create a safe and healthy workplace. WHMIS is successful only when suppliers, employers, and workers assume their responsibilities. The knowledge you have gained here will help you deal more safely with hazardous materials and keep your workplace safe from the dangers posed by these materials. This will better ensure your own safety and the safety of others.
Welcome to TEMPS Services' new hire and orientation process. From all of us at TEMPS Services, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for your time. Let's get started, shall we? Today's agenda will entail a day in the life of a temporary worker, how to obtain a full-time job, types of jobs, how to get paid, and health and safety.
Rate of pay. At TEMPS Services, we have 3 levels of pay: general labor, semi-skilled, and skilled labor. General labor starts at minimum wage and goes up to $16. Semi-skilled and skilled labor starts at minimum wage and goes up to $25. Some examples of skilled labor are Class 1 or 3 driver, a ticketed asbestos worker. Next slide, please.
In case of an emergency, such as a fire, our muster point is in the front of the parking lot by the telephone pole. We have 2 exits, either through the front door or through the exit at the rear. Hours of operation. Monday through Friday, we open at 5 a.m. and then we close at 6 p.m. Saturday, we open from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then we're closed, and we reopen at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. for payout. Sunday and general holidays, we are closed.
Types of jobs. At TEMPS Services, we have a variety of jobs, including warehousing, manufacturing, transportation, construction, administration, and even safety. We have 3 categories of pay: general labor, semi-skilled, and skilled labor.
For more information on our jobs, temp to perm positions, or any other postings, please visit our job board or go online at www.tempsservices.ca. Looking forward to hearing from you. Temporary worker to permanent employee. Many of our clients are looking for full-time staff. If you are chosen, you can go from temp to perm. With this, often that includes a pay raise and benefits. So get out there and get your job. How to get a job. We recommend to show up early, 5 a.m. Come on in up to the front, sign in, sit down, and wait for your name to be called. Please enjoy a cup of java. When completing the sign-in forms, be sure to review them carefully. The white form is for day jobs. The yellow form is for night jobs. You wouldn't want to be getting a call at midnight now, would you? We use a best match dispatch system, so please ensure to check off all the boxes that are applicable to you. Once you're signed in, we have a best match dispatch system. This is where we match the skills of the job with the right worker. For example, if you're a certified forklift operator, we'll be sending you to operate a forklift. If you have construction or office admin experience, these are the jobs for you. TEMPS Services always recommends before you go to work to review our Health and Safety Board. On our Health and Safety Board, we have job postings, notices, rules, our return to work process, hazard alerts, and much, much more. Stay alert with safety. Before you take your ticket and run off to work, read our toolbox talk at the front. We have a new topic every 2 weeks. It includes safety alerts, training, and other OHS information. When your name is called, based on our best match dispatch system, please come to the front. Our dispatcher will explain your job description, hazards of the job, PPE requirements, and rate of pay. Please remember to fill out your confirmation form before you get your ticket. Personal protective equipment, PPE. All our jobs require safety boots, CSA approved. No boots, no job. If you need additional PPE, such as vest or gloves, we will provide them for you for a nominal fee. We also have for purchase vest, hard hat, gloves, earplugs, and much, much more for a great price. Now that you have your work ticket, please ensure to review it for accuracy. Is it the correct name, start time, company, address, who you're reporting to, and contact information? And if you need a map to the job, we'll be happy to provide you one. And remember, you work for TEMPS Services. Transportation to the job. TEMPS Services has many options to assist you to the work site. You can walk if our client is close enough, take your own vehicle, or we'll provide you with a bus ticket or shuttle ride. For a nominal cost, we'll ensure you get to the job on time. Rules. We have rules for a reason, to make us more safe. No violence, no fighting, no drugs or alcohol, no stealing, no cash advances, and please, no personal phone calls on our phones. Thank you for cooperating. At TEMPS Services, there is work that we do not do for your safety. We do not work in confined or restricted spaces, in trenches more than 4 feet deep. We do not work on ladders or platforms above 8 feet. We do not work with unlabeled controlled products or with power tools due to the fact you need training and written approval from TEMPS Services. There is more on the Health and Safety Board, so get out there and be safe. Do not return, DNR. If you break a rule or we are informed by a supervisor that an infraction happened, you may not be able to return to that job or to TEMPS Services again. If a client or TEMPS Services requires a drug test, we will comply and so will you. We have a 3-strike rule. Thank you for your cooperation. Once you arrive to the work site, please ensure to check in. See if there's a site orientation or training for your job. Confirm that the job description matches what dispatch said it does. Look for hazards and review the ERP. Show your work ticket to the supervisor. And last but not least, safety comes first. TEMPS Services wants you to know your rights. No accidents today is our motto. The right to know. Ensure you know your hazards before you begin your task. The right to participate. If there's any meetings or training, participate and listen to what they have to say. The right to refuse unsafe work. We want to ensure everybody's in accordance with OHS. Be safe.
It's your right to know. Know your hazards before the job begins. In your worker handbook, we have job hazard assessments. On top of that, we may ask you to complete a field level risk assessment before work begins. And remember, death lurks in confined spaces.
Identifying hazards. For hazards that are not identified in your employee handbook, or your job description does not match what TEMPS Services dispatcher says, please call TEMPS Services ASAP. We want to ensure you're getting paid for the correct job.
Some examples of hazards that you may come across on a construction site are heavy equipment or machinery, carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide. So please be aware of your surroundings and be safe. While in manufacturing and warehouse locations, there are many hazards. Some examples are lift trucks. They can appear out of nowhere. Or pinch points and crushing machines. So be sure to be aware of your surroundings.
If you get hurt, inform your supervisor and get first aid as soon as possible. Call or inform TEMPS Services. We may be able to assist you with the shuttle to the clinic. We have WCB, and all workers must participate in our Return to Work program. Once you're on your feet, there are some forms to fill out, so come on back to TEMPS Services and we'll get you some modified work. TEMPS Services has an after-hours phone number. This is for emergencies such as if you are hurt or you cannot make a shift. If this is the case, please phone our after-hours driver at 403-399-1615. Once you're done your job, you'll want to return to TEMPS Services to get paid. Before you do, please stop and ensure the work ticket is signed by the appropriate supervisor. Check to see if the ticket has the correct hours. Did you take a lunch break? If you forget to do these things, you may be waiting for a long time to get your money, and we wouldn't want that, now would we?
Pay for the day. At TEMPS Services, we have 3 types of pay, either cash, quick check, or monthly check. For the cash and quick check service, we charge $3 and the change. We also add your vacation pay to each check. Don't try and rob us, because Brinks delivers the money and has guns, and only they know how to open the safe. Pay for the day. Hey, you guys. Yeah, you guys in the back. Pay attention, this is for you. If your ticket has a start time of 9 a.m. or later, you have to come in the next day to get paid. And remember, we have 3 forms of payment: cash, quick check, and monthly check.
Return tickets. If you were lucky enough to get a check mark for a return, congratulations, you're going back to work again. And for that privilege, you may even get weekly tickets. If you do receive weekly tickets, please ensure to check the information and call before each shift. We wouldn't want to revoke your privileges now, would we? Calling in before your shift. If you have weekly tickets or received a work ticket hours before your start time, please call us 1 hour before you leave. If you cannot make your shift, please call us 2 hours before the start time. We need to communicate to each other. We need to communicate to the client. Thank you for your cooperation. Be safe while you're out on the job. Through teamwork with our staff, our clients, and through TEMPS Services, we can get you back in one piece. And have fun.
Stay tuned for our hazard assessment training video. After the video, complete your test, complete your job application and skills section, and then stay seated. Our trainer will be with you right after that.
The fundamental principle behind any occupational health and safety program, procedure, or practice should be the control of hazards. Hazards are present in all workplaces and can lead to injuries, short and long-term illnesses and diseases, and sometimes death. Hazards clearly also have the potential to cause damage to plant, equipment, and goods. Lost productivity, increased costs, and most importantly, human suffering are three good reasons why it's vitally important to control hazards in the workplace. But before we can effectively control hazards in any working environment, we must first identify all the hazards that are present. Once all these hazards have been recognized or identified, we must then evaluate or assess each of them in terms of the risk or risks they present. Only then can we adopt a strategy of control measures to eliminate or reduce the hazards, and hence reduce the level of our exposure to the risks they present. This process could be more simply expressed as the recognition, evaluation, and control of hazards, which is sometimes referred to by the acronym REACH. As we have already said, the recognition or the identification of a hazard is the first step in the elimination or control of hazards in the workplace. In many cases, hazards are easily identified. Untidy work areas, inappropriate or damaged tools, incorrect manual handling techniques, and so on are all fairly obvious. Other hazards, however, can be more difficult to recognize. For example, identifying a dangerous fume from a production process. Likewise, the consequences of a pipe bursting or a chemical spill occurring are not easily predicted. In these less obvious situations, in order to be able to recognize the presence of hazards, we may need to know some of the following: information about the chemistry and especially the toxicity of raw materials, products, and byproducts; technological information about a process, procedure, or piece of equipment; an understanding of the effects of direct contact with specific hazardous substances; and an understanding of the possible routes of entry into the body of specific hazardous substances and the possible resultant health effects. The recognition of hazards is a vital first step in the hazard control process. Obviously, a hazard that has not been identified is one that can't be evaluated or controlled. Once a hazard has been recognized, there has to be an evaluation or assessment process of the hazard to identify exactly what risk or risks it presents. It should be remembered that a hazard is best described as the potential for an accident, illness, or injury to occur, and a risk is the likelihood that it will actually occur. So, this evaluation process should examine in detail both the potential dangers and the actual likelihood of an accident, illness, or injury occurring. The bottom line of the evaluation process is to identify all the risks involved and make decisions on whether or not the risks are within acceptable limits or the hazard must be controlled to reduce the level of associated risk. In many cases, an evaluation can be made based on experience. Evaluations can also be made based on industry standards. relevant regulations, establish safe work procedures, and source materials, such as material safety data sheets. In other cases, scientific measurements may be necessary to evaluate the extent of the risk. For example, testing for noise and vibration levels and atmospheric testing to detect levels of toxic gases or other potential airborne contaminants. In certain situations, outside experts may also be required to make the necessary evaluation. When the evaluation process indicates a need to control the hazard, the question then becomes, what control strategy should be adopted? This strategy often involves the implementation of a combination of control measures to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. The ultimate control measure is the elimination of the hazardous substance, process, or activity altogether. Examples of this elimination technique include removing a fire hazard by using non-combustible materials instead of combustibles, using a supplier to handle a particularly hazardous process that they may be better equipped to carry out, removing sharp edges from plant and equipment, eliminating protruding objects, or eliminating a manual handling task by using a mechanical lifting device. Obviously, there are numerous other examples, but clearly not all hazards can be eliminated. Our next best option is to employ the substitution method, and we can do this by asking the question, can we substitute a process, chemical, or activity for a less hazardous one? For example, can we have a toxic substance applied in a different form that will be less hazardous? For instance, replace a liquid with a powder or a powder with granules. Or can we have a toxic substance applied at a lower concentration that will still effectively perform the task? Can we reduce the handling of a material by having it delivered to a different location? Can we divide a load to make it easier to handle? Or can we reduce the level of airborne contaminants, for example, by replacing a spraying process with a dipping process? Tackling hazards by employing elimination or substitution measures can often be very effective and frequently at little or no added expense. Unfortunately, elimination and substitution are only practical and fully effective in dealing with some hazardous situations. To deal with many hazards, we must employ engineering or administrative control measures. Engineering controls are many and varied. Examples include the general design of the workplace, plant, and equipment, the installation of additional lighting to provide adequate illumination, and the use of automation and mechanical devices. There are also three groups of engineering control measures that are frequently used, and they are isolation, containment, and limitation. Safe welding practice is an example of one type of isolation control. Hazardous light emissions and sparks are isolated from others through the use of screens. The storage of chemicals is another example where, for example, oxidizers and other flammable substances are stored in different locations. Isolation also involves enclosure, and this technique is often used for the control of noise levels. By enclosing either the hazard or the operator, we can effectively isolate the person from the noise. Further examples of the isolation principle include the installation of machine guards, interlocks, and warning devices. The containment principle is best illustrated by the use of a local exhaust system. Here we are effectively removing a source of contaminants before they can enter the atmosphere, or in other words, we are containing the hazard at its source. The use of a technique best described as limitation is the last of the major engineering control groups. Here, the purpose is to limit the effect of the potential hazard to reduce the likelihood of injuries or damage occurring. For example, to prevent a system's pressure buildup to an unsafe level, a safety pressure valve may be installed. Likewise, the potential of an electrical hazard may be reduced by using, for example, batteries instead of the normal mains power supply. Or the potential for spills may be limited by the installation of an overflow system. Administrative controls involve laying down policies and managing workplace procedures. Examples include establishing procedures for the ongoing maintenance of plant and equipment, monitoring of contaminant levels, organizing hazardous operations to occur when relatively small numbers of people are present, commonly between shifts or after normal working hours, and rotation of people to reduce exposure to a particular hazard. These are all examples of administrative controls that can contribute significantly to hazard control. The use of personal protective equipment is the final option available for controlling hazards. As a control measure, its role is recommended only when all other options are either unsatisfactory or not practical. It is also important not to confuse the role of personal protective equipment as a control measure with its more widespread and important role as a precaution, as a last line of defense if an accident should occur. There are, however, two situations where the use of personal protective equipment is vital in hazard control. First, when carrying out normally hazardous operations such as welding, spraying, or working in a confined space that have been identified as requiring the use of personal protective equipment, and second, in emergencies or when conducting investigations where the levels or even the existence of hazards are unknown. The recognition, evaluation, and control of hazards, or REACH, is a fundamental concept in workplace safety. It is applicable to all workplace hazards, physical, chemical, biological, and environmental. The process remains the same, regardless of the hazard. It is clear that the control of hazards can be achieved in numerous ways, often with a combination of measures necessary to obtain a satisfactory level of safety. The process may be complicated in some cases. However, the message is simple. With the system in place for the recognition, evaluation, and control of hazards, we can effectively minimize the risks presented by all hazards.
Now that your safety orientation is finished, please complete the forms in front of you. Ensure that all your worker information is on the form and that your name and signature is on both sides. On the health and safety form, check off all the boxes and sign the back. Our safety trainer will be with you in a moment. On behalf of everybody from TEMPS Services, we'd like to thank you for attending our new hire and orientation process. And remember, safety is everyone's responsibility.
Site safety is everybody's responsibility. We look forward to hearing from you after your job is done. Once again, thank you for your time and be safe.